Good afternoon, dears. Welcome to this afternoon session of EduSet. As you know, the topic of discussion today is Gandhian perspective on development. This is a topic which refers to the Sociology of Development course, MA course, which you must have already gone through and may be familiar with the topic itself. Today we are here to discuss this topic with you, and between myself and my colleague, I will introduce Dr. Neeta Mathur, Faculty of Sociology, School of Social Sciences, and I am Dr. Archana Singh from Faculty of Sociology, School of Social Sciences. As you must be aware of, we all know what development refers to as per the common knowledge, that people want to progress, they want to produce more, consume more, and they believe that material progress is in some ways parallel to the progress of humankind on this earth. But as you know that Mahatma Gandhi had a certain different ideology on this concept of development, which referred to development in a very different way. Now, in what way Mahatma Gandhi talked about development? For him, development is basically, there are two aspects. One is that self-development is more significant. It has to be given more priority than material prosperity. And the other is that we should give more emphasis and support to the development of rural village industries and grassroots growth, rather than to the development of machinery and technology. All these things Gandhi was talking about during a period when there was lot of turmoil going on in Indian society. The freedom struggle was on, and the poor were very, very poor, in the sense that villages were not so much progressed as we find villages of modern days. In fact, it's sort of question that we can ask, that if we have Gandhi today, and if Gandhi looks at India today, whether he'll feel the same thing as he felt at that time. That's a very interesting question, and we all can think about it. But basically, Mahatma Gandhi's ideas, they have found relevance till date, because many things which he spoke about are so true to life, and in spite of all this running for the rat race of life, of achieving, of gaining progress, both technological, economic, there is somewhere there space which is not finding its true place, and that space is of spirituality, of religion, of being a total composite whole. And Mahatma Gandhi's views may sound a bit old, and in many ways many intellectuals might think that it is outdated in the modern context of globalization and increased technology and communications. But the relevance to the individuals, the survival of the individual, the happiness and the welfare quotient of modern day living is somewhere what Mahatma Gandhi was talking about. Now, he was against this material progress and consumerism, and he believed that economic progress is something quite different from the real progress. Real progress depended on, which is what he believed was rooted in the Swadeshi, that we become self-sufficient, the villagers become self-sufficient, autonomous, both economically and politically, in the sense that they don't have to depend for their survival and livelihood on outside world so much as they have to depend if there is too much of technology which is from outside, products which are coming from outside. So in many ways he was against the mechanization of production in that sense. Now he talked about Swadeshi. Swadeshi was a concept which he coined to bring about a kind of national unity, and he believed that around 7 lakh villages in India, they were poor because of this introduction of machinery, which was causing lot of poverty and unemployment and underemployment amongst the masses in India. The solution to which he looked at was the adoption of Swadeshi, that mostly the people in India would give up the foreign goods, the machine-made goods, and instead they should take up the handmade, the products which were produced by the villagers themselves using little capital and their own knowledge of technology. So he believed that charkha, or the spinning wheel, which was something which any villager could have in his or her house, could produce a kind of generate an employment as well as a collective unity of the people in India. This charkha could make them generate more employment in the villages, could create the wealth which was required for the basic necessities which the human beings wanted. He was against collection of too much of commodity or products which was there in the capitalistic world. So in a way there was thinking in his view about development which was away from the capitalistic development point of view. So that Gandhian perspective in a way was something which would have led to a kind of economic trusteeship, where the rich would take care of the poor and would also share their wealth to help the other people to survive as much as their own survival, and self-sufficiency would be generated, for which no foreign product was required, or intervention of any foreign product was not necessary in his point of view, because that would create more poverty, more crisis in the society. In many ways his concept of khadi and the development of village industries was a kind of utopian view of the village, where everybody was happy and prosperous enough to be able to gain confidence and live a very healthy and spiritual life. So spirituality and intellectual growth was part of his idea about the village in India. There are many aspects which he has talked about. I think Dr. Neeta Mathur would like to continue the discussion on the Gandhian perspective further, because there is a lot which he has spoken about on development.
Yes, thank you, Archana, and she's made my task a little easy. That's because she has provided in a nutshell what Gandhi actually meant by development and the whole Gandhian perspective on development, so to say. So now what I will do is I will fill in the nuances and I will show you the logical interconnection between say khadi, charkha, village industries, and let's see how all these are connected. These concepts are connected in a composite whole, which is the root of Gandhi's concept of development. Now, Archana just told you that Gandhi was not in favor of material progress. What is, after all, development in common parlance that we understand? In common parlance, when we talk of development, we talk of advancement, we talk of progress. And what do we mean by advancement and progress? More wealth, more material prosperity, more purchasing power, isn't it? But is that development? If you go by economic indicators, certainly. And that is why in this whole world is divided into different categories. And the Indians, so to say, fall in an underdeveloped country or a developing country, as they say now. But is this development that Gandhi talked about? No, because Gandhi said that when you talk about development, it is self-development which gains precedence over material development. He denounced material development and he said that American wealth, and I'll tell you what he said about material development and what he said about the measure of prosperity. If we take material advancement or material development into account, we go on to the slide which says measure of prosperity, and I quote him. He says, American wealth has become the standard. She is the envy of other nations. I have heard many of our countrymen say that we will gain American wealth but avoid its means. So while he understood, he recognized that people said that, American wealth is good, but the means that they adopt to achieve it are not good. But Gandhi said that if such an attempt were made, if someone were to say that we will try and acquire the kind of wealth that America has, but we will not adopt the same means, then such an attempt is not possible. It is foredoomed to failure, so he said. And he said we cannot be wise and furious and temperate at the same time. So, according to him, the means were equally important as the end to which we were striving. About material prosperity, he said it's a beautiful thing to know that the wealthiest amongst us often own that to have remained voluntarily poor would have been a higher state for them, right? People who are rich, if you speak to them, they say, no, richness is not so good, you see. Poverty, the original form in which we started was much better. Now, and he said, you cannot serve God and mammon at the same time. We have to make our choice. Now, Western nations are groaning under the heels of the monster. And what is the monster? The god of materialism. Their moral growth has become stunted. They today measure their progress in pounds, shillings, and pennies. Right? So then, what do we do? Well, he talked about self-development. And let's see what self-development means. All of us say, Gandhi talked about self-development. Now, what does self-development mean? Self-development, by self-development, he meant self-governance, he meant self-reliance, he meant empowerment of the local people, he referred to decentralization of power, right? So, instead of one nucleus holding power, he talked of multiple nuclei of power. And he talked of strengthening the village economy. Now, how is the village economy to be strengthened? It's all very easy to sit back and say we should strengthen the village economy. We always hear our political leaders talking about strengthening the village economy, but let's find out what the modalities of this whole process of strengthening the village modalities is concerned. Well, by strengthening of village economy, he meant development of village industries and working at the grassroots. Now, if we accept this, if we say he talked about and we agree, or even if we don't agree, let's see how the logical conclusions can be drawn from this statement that we give precedence to village industries. what happens then? It's only then very natural that the use of modern technology, the use of modern machinery is minimized, right? Gandhi did give the example of the contrast between Bengal and Bombay. Bombay, where mills were set up, by then Bengal was still working with the hands, and he said that the condition, one should compare the condition of women in both the places to realize that the women working in mills were in a worse condition than the women who were working with the hands. But then, once the village industry, once these mills have been set up, what do? Is there a way out? Gandhi said, it's not possible, it is not even appropriate to bring down a mill, so to say, after it is established. But then, it's important to have registered protest at the time that it was being set up. Once it has come up, it's very difficult to demolish it. A lot of capital is involved, a lot of input is gone into it. So one should be aware, one should be open and resist its coming up in the first place. Now, if we don't develop the machinery, then how do we go about it? And I just told you, he said you should develop the village industries. Now, if we develop the village industries, what happens? Why should we do it? Development of the village industry leads to the upliftment of the poor and the downtrodden. Right? Now, what would happen? And what would be the role of the rich then? Well, Gandhi talked of non-possession, and he said that the rich have superfluous store of things which they do not need and which are therefore neglected and wasted, while millions are starved to death for want of sustenance. We see that contrast all the time, right? Now, if each person retained only a portion of what they actually needed, the situation of want, of desire, of impoverishment would automatically be curtailed, and many people would be able to live in peace and contentment. It's very interesting, and the last two sentences I will quote. He said, as it is, the rich are discontent no less than the poor. The rich are equally discontent. The poor man would fain become a millionaire, and the millionaire a multimillionaire. He said the rich should take the initiative in dispossession with a view to universal diffusion of the spirit of contentment. If only they keep their own property within moderate limits, the starving will be easily fed and will learn the lesson of contentment along with the rich. That's what he said that the role of the rich should be. Now, when Gandhi said that village industries should be given precedence, village industries should be encouraged, Gandhi had a vision, a dream of village in India. In one of the letters that he wrote to Nehru, he said, the village of my dream is still in my mind. My ideal village will contain intelligent human beings. They will not live in dirt and darkness as animals. Men and women will be free and able to hold their own against anyone in the world. There will be neither plague nor cholera nor smallpox. No one will be idle. No one will wallow in luxury. Everyone will have to contribute his quota of manual labor. That's what he said. Now, so remember, when Gandhi is talking of self-development and Gandhi is decrying the use of machinery and mills and technology in the real sense of the word, you see, he is in the whole process inculcating a kind of strength within an individual, and that is the core of self-development. Now, a person can be self-reliant, a person can be, self-disciplined, self-governed, empowered. That gives him or her the strength. So he's not talking of a weak spirit. He's talking of a very strong individual. He's talking of men and women alike in the same vein. So then, self-reliance, self-governance, empowerment, strengthening of village industries is linked. How does it actually happen? Now we've understood what is meant by self-development. We've understood that, development of village industries is important for self-reliance, is important for the upliftment of the downtrodden and the poor. But then, how do we actually do it? What is the operational modality of the whole thing? He gave a philosophy of life. And that philosophy of life was something that Archana just referred to when she said that he talked of Swadeshi. Now, let's understand what this whole concept of Swadeshi means. Please understand that the word Swadeshi can be split into two, Swa and Deshi. Swa means self, Deshi means country. Simple. So when he said Swadeshi, the philosophy was that one should find all necessaries of life or utilize all necessaries of life from resources and processes within the country and not rely on outside countries, right? But then what happens if you need something and it's not produced by your country? Then what do you do? In the modern day, we import and we export our surplus to other countries. So there is a mutual give and take exchange. One can understand this. But surely Gandhi was not talking of this when he said, find the necessaries of life within the country. He meant that if something that you need is not produced within your own country, then you look for alternatives within the country, or don't use that thing. So he talked about Swadeshi to a particular end, to a specific end, with a specific end in mind. It was not a halfway thing. Okay, if you find it, it's all right. If you don't find it, go borrow. That's not what he was talking about. He took Swadeshi to its logical conclusion, right? Now, what do we mean by Swadeshi? Is, I told you, is, look for the necessaries of life within the country. But what are the basic requirements? Food, clothing, shelter? When he said Swadeshi, he also meant that one should look for necessaries of life, preferably produced by the village people. And as we move on, I will tell you why he emphasized so much on the village people and the intellect and the wisdom of the village people. We'll surely talk about it, but let's see the operational part of it. We are going step by step, right? So we talked about Swadeshi. How can Swadeshi be, the philosophy of Swadeshi, be realized in real life situations? Right? That is the core concern of several of us. Well, he said Swadeshi can be realized through the spinning wheel. Through the spinning wheel? How? Simple. Gandhi said, if we feel for the starving masses of India, we must introduce the spinning wheel into their homes. Right? We must therefore become experts, and in order to make them realize the necessity of life, we must spin daily as a sacrament. Of course, you all know that Gandhi used to spin every day. Now, if you have understood the secret of the spinning wheel, if you realize that it is a symbol of love of mankind, you will engage in no other outward activity. If many people do not follow you, you have more leisure for spinning, carding, or weaving. This is what he said when he talked about the spinning wheel. And spinning wheel at that time became a symbol of empowerment, of communication, of an ideology, of a philosophy of life. In villages at that time, it's difficult now to imagine how even anti-malaria campaigns could be organized around a spinning wheel, because that was a symbol that actually united people across the length and breadth of this nation. in another context, Gandhi said that as a person spins every day, the whole process of spinning and the regularity of it brings in a kind of spiritual discipline in an individual. And as a person continues to spin, his or her mind gets consolidated. That is the whole objective of spiritual maturity, isn't it? So, spinning wheel then became a symbol not only of economic upliftment, but also of spiritual advancement. And I will now go back to what Archana said, that when he talked of development, he talked of total development. He talked of development of the body and the mind and the soul all together in a holistic perspective. And it was not that, economically one has developed and not so well developed by the body or by the soul or by the spirit. He talked of development as an integrated whole. Now, spinning wheel generates khadi, right? Khadi, he said, should be treated or should be taken with all its implications. Now, khadi and Swadeshi cannot be separated, right? One is interrelated, conjoined with the other. It means, and the use of khadi means, a wholesale Swadeshi mentality, a determination to find all the necessaries of life in India, and that too through the labor and intellect of the villagers, mind you. That means a reversal of the existing process. Right? That is to say that instead of half a dozen cities of India and Britain living on the exploitation of and the reign of 7 lakh villages of India, the latter will be largely self-contained and will voluntarily serve the cities of India and even outside the world insofar as it benefits both the parties. Right? So that is the power of khadi. Now, when we say the spinning wheel became the symbol of unity in this nation, it connected individuals across the nation, did it have other connotations also? Did it mean something else? Did it bespeak the voice of the people before the British? Remember, this whole discourse is being contextualized at the time when the British were ruling this country. Well, the spinning wheel emerged as an alternative means of employment. Right? It's equally important to remember or to know first that the spinning wheel represented the protest of industrialism, protest against, industrialism and materialism. That it represented decentralization of the production process. So each villager had the power to produce at the tips of his or her fingers. That was the power of the spinning wheel. Now, Gandhi said that let's contrast the village industries with, say, khadi or khadi production. He said that the village industries were the handmaids of khadi. Why? The difference is that village industries do not involve voluntary labor. In khadi, what is involved is voluntary labor. And that is how khadi gets place little higher than the other village industries. This is not to say that there should be no coppersmiths, there should be no ironsmiths, there should be no leather workers. Not that. But khadi had greater precedence. Production of khadi had greater precedence. Equally important was that the people in the cities should make use of the products that are generated by the village people. Even if, and Gandhi did mention this somewhere in one of his writings, that even if the village products cost a little more, one should still opt for village products. The reason was very simple, that the revenue that is generated out of it goes to the masses, does not get consolidated in the hands of the few rich. That is why one should opt for village products, even if they cost a little more. That was Gandhi's view. Now, another component, we talked of village industries, we talked of Swadeshi, we talked of the production process and the protest against the British through the use of khadi. Let's go on to another building block or another pillar in the whole perspective that Gandhi held about development. We cannot ignore, and we should not ignore, Gandhi's ideas on education. Right? Gandhi talked of education, imparting education in one's mother tongue. He said, if you learn, if one gets educated in a foreign language, that enslaves the nation. Right? That is because the people who learn the new language are not able to relate with the masses and can therefore never speak on their behalf. A very interesting thing that he said was that the problems of village sanitation, of hygiene, would be solved much more quickly if they were handled in mother tongue and not in a foreign language. Right? So much so for language. Now, Gandhi's ideas on education sought to interlink growth of the mind, the soul, the body. How? I'll tell you that in a minute, because Gandhi gave the whole concept of Nai Talim. Nai means new, Talim means education in a very, very broad sense. And he said, he provided an alternative pedagogy, and he said, let us take the case of a child in whom education of the heart is attended to from the very beginning. So remember, he is not talking of the 3 R's to begin with. The 3 R's are reading, writing and arithmetic. He was not talking of that to begin with. What he was talking about was the growth or the inner development of an individual. Now, he says, as against this, take the case of a child in whom the education of the heart is attended to from the very beginning. Suppose he is set to some useful occupation like spinning, carpentry, agriculture, etc. for his education, and in that connection is given a thorough and comprehensive knowledge relating to the theory of the various operations that he is to perform and the use and construction of the tools that he would be wielding. Naturally, Gandhi is talking about education which is linked to the performance of activities in everyday life. This is what he... Yeah.
If I may
Sure,
intervene, I was just thinking of the Tolstoy farm which Gandhi had established in South Africa, and where he had a collection of children whom they were residing in the school, and their education was both, I think, doing manual work also in the school as well as learning in the school. And the whole notion of this basic education of the development of body, soul and mind, it was taken care of by having bhajans of some amount of sort of communal harmony and collective work together with others in the farm to maintain the farm. So it seemed as if it was kind of home and school together. So what Gandhi had, I think, basically meant in his notions of education was there should be a continuity of values, of ideas and practices, especially religious practices, which were not contrasting with each other, as happens when children go to English educated schools, where English is taught and the background of the teachers is different from the students, and there is a disparity in the value system itself. So that's why he spoke more about continuity dealing with the vernacular and having a kind of knowledge of English was something which he felt was necessary, but it was something which was only part of the process. The rest of the education was education which was continued from the family itself to the educational center. So I think
Yes, Archana, you are very right. In fact, it's good that you raised it, because I also wanted to stress this point that Gandhi was very deeply aware that sometimes it is really difficult to do away with education in English or English-based education. But then he emphasized that morality should be imparted through the mother tongue. So it's not like the kind of schools that we have where, English is most important and everything else, including moral science in some schools, is taught in English. That's not what he emphasized. The other thing that he said about education, which is equally important, is that the schools should be self-sufficient, should be generating revenue, or should be able to sustain themselves. Otherwise, the schools would not be able to function or operate for a longer time. This is also something that he said. So then, what is knowledge? Knowledge about the basic laws of physics, or some laws of chemistry, or knowledge of biology or commerce, or all this? That's not the totality of education that Gandhi talked about. He talked about integrating or learning from everyday experience. And the scheme of education that he proposed was craft-based in its approach. Craft-based in the sense that where skills formed or constituted the core of learning. And from there, one would learn about basic laws, learn about different subjects, go into different disciplines, but at the core of it would lie the thorough knowledge of the craft or of the skill. Gandhi said that one should be able to learn from everyday experience, and that when this happens, a child would not only develop a fine, healthy body, but also a sound, vigorous intellect that is not merely academic, but is firmly rooted in and is tested from day-to-day experience. His intellectual education would include knowledge of mathematics and the various sciences that are useful for an intelligent and efficient exercise of his avocation. If to this literature is added by way of recreation, it would give the child a perfect, well-balanced, all-round education in which the intellect, the body and the spirit have all full and developed together into a natural, harmonious whole. So Gandhi emphasized learning from everyday experience, learning which is rooted in the mundane existence of an individual. So then, did he propose a scheme of education? It is all right to say that it should be so, but how do we go about it? Gandhi did propose a definite scheme of education, and he said that adult education of the whole community, including the parents of newborn babies, that was his first point. Then he said pre-basic schooling from 2 to 7 years, basic schooling from 7 to 14 years, post-basic schooling from 14 to 18 years, and university and teacher training institute education later on. Now, how do we then prepare the schedule of education? Gandhi said that the schedule consists of rendering morning prayer, cleaning of the campus including lavatories, engaging in productive work which includes spinning, weaving, cultivation and other activities, preparing meals and studies. Students were taught to think before doing and think after doing. Remember, I just said that means are equally important for Gandhi as the ends. So one should think before one is performing an activity, and also think after he or she has performed the activity. All of them were imparted training in music and art. Stagecraft and management were an important part of education. In the afternoon before dinner, they played games, and the evening prayer was essential. This is the schedule of operation that Gandhi proposed for schools. Now, We've talked about education. What should this education lead to? What is, after all, why are we talking of this whole perspective on development of Gandhi? What end did he have in mind? Of course, the fundamental end that he had in mind was strong spirit, body, mind, soul, fine. But he also talked about development geared towards economic equality, to bridge the gap between capital and labor. By capital is meant the means of production. So it is the bridging of the gap between the rich and the poor. How? Archana gave you a hint in the beginning itself. Gandhi talked of trusteeship, joint trusteeship of the people. He was against, or he did not approve of the idea of power or control in the hands of few people. He talked of, I told you a few minutes ago, empowerment at the local level in all its implications. When trusteeship happens, what would it lead to? It would lead to abolition of unemployment, participation of the people at the grassroots. Gandhi felt that unemployment and underemployment of the people was primarily due to acute pressure on land and the absence of supplementary industries. So, another important component of development then, and this which now gets linked very clearly with this whole process of development and empowerment and self-realization, self-reliance and self-governance, is the abolition of untouchability, or the difference between person, individual and individual on the basis of caste, which had been so rampant at that time. Remember, Gandhi gave the word Harijan to empower the people, so to say that these were children of the Lord. Hari means Lord, Jan means the masses. So this is how the whole concept of development from the perspective of Gandhi can be linked up. But is this the only perspective? Or to just frame it differently, of course there are different perspectives on development, and your whole block is devoted to different perspectives on development. Gandhian is only one. But Gandhi has been questioned on several counts. The basic question that is raised often is whether Gandhi and Gandhi's ideals and Gandhi's thought is relevant today. Well, that's for you to think, debate, ponder. Both views exist very sharp on either side. There are many institutions that are engaged in working out a synthesis between the two. Or should there be a synthesis? Or we should just adopt Gandhi's model of development and forget about the rest of the models? Or we should side with the other party and say Gandhi's concept of development is not so significant? That's something that you have to think and debate and develop your own ideas on. But Gandhi has also been criticized, has also been questioned, so to say, on his ideas about modern machinery. Very sharply at times, when it is said that in the present age where technology is developing so fast, Gandhi himself is the ideas about Gandhi are spreading so fast throughout the world through the use of modern technology itself. So is it then appropriate to say and to accept Gandhi's criticism on technology? Gandhi's voice is now available on cassettes, on CDs. So when Gandhi himself, Gandhi's pictures, Gandhi's voice, Gandhi's ideas, Gandhi's publications are all available through technology. Is it appropriate to say that Gandhi's ideas on modern machinery are appropriate? Well, that's a question that both of us would want to leave you with and ask you, request you to discuss and debate at your study center. Right? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.